It's Friday. You know what's going to happen. Drop it. Power panel. Okay, Iadarola, Iadarola.
We've been working together for 7 years almost.
Okay, I'll get it one day. So, and Nayyera Haq for the first time, at least with me, yes.
Thank you.
Okay, great to have you here. Nayyera's on Sirius XM, where we first got started, and have had about 17 different shows throughout all the years. And was formerly a senior director in the White House's State Department.
Fancy schmancy title, right?
That is.
Fancy schmancy.
Back when the State Department meant something.
Yes.
Yeah, back when it stated.
And had people in it.
And it had diplomacy. That's pretty neat. I wanted to ask you one quick question about that. So what does a senior director in the White House do?
Right, exactly. Right. Some of it, I have to say, it's give them a fancy title because they're in the White House, so they can have some authority over all the other minions that are in the government.
Yeah.
But my job there was actually, it was kind of keep all the trains running on time, and a lot of it is doing what the Trump administration is not doing right now. It's like actually coordinating policy, talking to different branches of the government, and be like, oh, we have this thing we want to do in immigration. We probably should get some people around the table to discuss it. All the people where the things matter, so we don't end up with everyone being surprised about children being separated at the border. It's like, child immigration, the unaccompanied minors. These are some of the issues I worked on. I worked with all the national security agencies, kind of keeping us on the same page, and so it really breaks my heart to see how we are not working all one team, one fight when it comes to what we do overseas.
Yeah, although sometimes since it's the Trump administration, I don't agree with their goals. I welcome their incompetence. So I like when Trump randomly tweets something and everybody else in the government goes, what?
They're not exactly the most effective about implementing anything, at least on the domestic front so far. It's more of like what they're undoing and unraveling, right? So domestically, they're unraveling all these great things we had about protecting the environment and keeping our food safe, just basic things that called regulations, and they give them a bad rap. And overseas, they're just thumbing their nose at all of our friends and allies and people who want to work with us, and instead just building relationships with rogue assassins, apparently.
Yeah. Well, people attacking the media both at home and abroad, as we're about to tell you guys. And a little bit later in the program, and by the way, also at Politicon, the two panels, What's Next for Liberals and Bomb Iran. I assume you're in the anti-bombing contingent of that panel.
Generally speaking, I prefer not to start with bombing people. This is just how I roll.
Well, so Bill Kristol's at Politicon and a bunch of panels on a panel with Anna. Is he on the bomb?
We're on the same panel, and we were just on a panel on CNN together too, where we really agreed that's how bad the Saudis are.
Wow.
Like he and I were, we are spectrums apart when it comes to foreign policy and just politics, but we're like, no, this actually is really horrible and bad for America.
Yeah.
That's the beauty of the Trump administration. It's bringing us all together.
Don't worry, on that panel, you guys will be back to disagreeing.
And I think actually the What's Next for Liberals, I think Sally Cohn is on that as well, who was on yesterday's episode of The Damage Report, which you should download in podcast form on iTunes or Android.
And I'm also gonna do another one they just added me into called Muslims in Miniskirts. I'm not wearing a miniskirt right now under this table. I may or may not tomorrow, we'll see.
Interesting. They did not invite me to that one.
No.
So, by the way, in the second hour, Roland Martin. So that's going to be great as well. And I should give you a plug on Politicon since we just talked about it, how to get tickets, because we're doing some sort of giveaway. It's important. Here we go. tyt.com/Politicon, and you sign up to get for a chance to win tickets to Politicon, which would be pretty neat. And I will be debating Tucker Carlson there. So ought to be interesting.
By the way, sort of last minute thing, I might be doing a panel at it.
Oh, is that right?
I'm talking to someone. I'm not sure if I want to.
Okay.
But just because of the particular situation. But anyway, it might happen.
We can put you in on the Muslim in miniskirts one if you'd like to join.
That would be awesome, actually. Actually, I remember, so I did a little bit of studying in Egypt, and at some of the universities, they had old photos of like some of the administrators who went to school in Egypt back in the 70s, and they show, and they've got long hair and miniskirts and everything like that, and obviously things had changed so much.
So that's some of the conversation is what's perception, what's reality, how do everyday Muslims really kind of sort of look.
Yeah. Let's just note the humble brag that just happened, and we can move forward. That's okay.
only brought it up 1,000 times. Anyway.
Okay, anyways, 17 days before the election, don't forget to vote. You gotta vote. I know we got to get to the stories, and I'm going to tell you the little bit later story on Beto. Did he apologize one more time? Oh no, don't do it, Beto, don't do it. All right, anyways, but I read something this morning, 3 things that are discouraging about the state of the vote, and 2 that are very encouraging. So 3 are, unfortunately, in early voting, young people are not voting nearly in the numbers that were expected or needed for Democrats to gain control. Latinos also not voting in the numbers that were hoped for. The Republicans' lack of energy not happening. They're still fully energized. Okay, all 3 of those are pretty bad. But on the upside, Democratic energy in early voting and just about every other metric is literally record breaking. So never been this high. And when you combine primary voting, special election voting, and early voting, it appears that the wave is coming. So, but you got to show up, brothers and sisters. If you don't, the Republicans always show up. I mean, you got to give them that. When it comes to the vote, they always deliver. So but there's a lot more Democrats in the country. All you got to do is show up and vote. That's the main thing. All right, that's my public service announcement for the day. Later, we'll give you incentive to vote in that Cruz O'Rourke thing, but I will show you that again, and we'll tell you how much you guys funded it. But that's a little bit later in the program. All right, John.
Okay, let's turn to more awesome news. It is campaign season, so Donald Trump, as he has been doing a lot of recently, went to Montana to hold a rally for himself. But while he was talking about himself, he also briefly mentioned the congressman in that area who needed his help, and that is Greg Gianforte. Now, if you remember Gianforte, it's probably because just days before his special election, he violently assaulted a reporter. Apparently, Donald Trump remembers him for that same thing, as you'll see in this clip.
Never wrestle him. You understand that? Never. Any guy that can do a body slam, he's my kind. He's my guy. I shouldn't say this but there's nothing to be embarrassed about. So I was in Rome with a lot of the leaders from other countries talking about all sorts of things, and I heard about it. And we endorsed Greg very early, but I had heard that he body slammed a reporter. And he was way up. And he was way up, and I said, oh, this was like the day of the election or just before. And I said, oh, this is terrible. He's going to lose the election. Then I said, well, wait a minute. I know Montana pretty well. I think it might help him. And it did.
That's awesome.
Okay, so I am going to come at this from probably a different point of view than all other pundits. And so everybody's shocked and chagrined for very understandable reasons that we'll all get into. I want to note in the beginning that it is actually not bad politics. And so that's the unacceptable part, but you got to know the reality in order to adjust to it, okay? So, and I have literally told Democrats in Montana, progressives that are running that care about my opinion, don't ever call him the body slammer because it sounds cool. Yes.
It's a compliment.
Yeah.
This is the state that elected Jesse Ventura to be their governor, right? A former wrestler.
No, that was Minnesota.
Okay, I'm confusing my own states.
But Montana, Minnesota starts very similar start. So no, but yes, in terms of populist appeal, Trump is the WWE president. Okay, they treat him like he's Hulk Hogan. And I've explained this before that Jim Acosta, the CNN reporter, in this case, the crowd started looking at him when Trump pointed to the press and said, when as he was saying, about the body slam, etc. And a bunch of people started doing this to Jim Acosta, like we're gonna body slam you. Apparently, one guy did this and ran his thumb across his throat. But in a lot of these rallies afterwards, they go up to Acosta and ask for his autograph. So why in the world do they do that? Because he's a heel. It's a soap opera. It's WWE, and so
yeah,
and that's why. Look, certainly for Republican voters, I don't think it plays poorly. Okay, and for a lot of independents. The most important thing is independence, right? So that's why I counsel people to don't call him a body slammer, call him the criminal Gianforte, because he is. He pled guilty. He's a convicted criminal for assaulting a reporter. That's your preface. Now let's talk about how terrible it is that you're encouraging violence against reporters, because it's not actually WWE. It's the real world where there's real violence. Like, for example, a reporter was just dismembered and beheaded. I mean, of all the times to celebrate a political figure physically assaulting a reporter, he has no sense at all. Or right after Khashoggi, to go and celebrate assaulting reporters is unreal.
And it's not that long ago that someone went into the Capitol Gazette newsroom and gunned down multiple reporters. Like, it's one thing, like, yes, maybe some of the fans see him as a heel, but there's other people who like Donald Trump and like his politics and think every once in a while about murdering journalists in America. And it scares me that he gets so much cover. Like, Fox News is gonna love that. I agree totally, it's great politically. If he told them that they should go out and kill libs, that would be pretty good for him politically too, probably. I don't think that there's any bottom level to this. It's just terrible that this is where we've gotten to and that there are so many people providing cover for him.
Well, give him bread and give him circuses, right? This is what he's doing. He is giving them exactly what feels good in the moment. And it feels good to start a fight, I guess, or to pick a fight with somebody. And maybe it feels good to be a bully for the near term, but it's not a great long-term strategy for, I don't know, actually building a civilization that's going to work well in the future.
Yeah. And then, of course, you see the ridiculous hypocrisy, both from individuals and from his side generally. So Eric Trump went, I think a 2-day period from saying, Eric Holder saying, when they go low, we kick them. That is just uncivil and that is what is wrong with America. My dad saying the body slamming is awesome. People don't want someone who's gonna carefully just deliver their talking points. They want someone real. And there's no inconsistency between those, he says, specifically. And then in general, what are you getting from the right these days? The left wing is a violent mob. They are coming for you, they're violent, out of control. Isn't it awesome when our guy body slammed a journalist? Isn't that great? Isn't it great when the Proud Boys roam through the streets of New York beating people? Isn't it great when the Prayer Patriots stock sniper rifles on the top of parking structures before protests? Isn't that awesome? Against those left wings, man, they're a real mob. They're real dangerous coming for you. And
if they're not a mob, then they're nerds who deserve to get beaten up because
at the same time,
because they're too intellectual, right? They're think too much about things.
Yeah. So.
What a ridiculous country we live in.
I know, and what drives me crazy is not the right-wing hypocrisy. I'm enormously used to it. And look, they don't live in the fact-based world, so then they can have any fantasy they like. And so for you and I, it might seem irrational to think, well, how could you call the protesters, just protesters who were loud with their voices in the Kavanaugh situation, a mob, but celebrate violence that your side does. Literally, like, I mean, you saw the video, they're cheering, like, yeah, let's beat up people and insult them. The left's a mob. So to us, that makes no sense. To the right wing, just for all of you out there who are progressives or rational people, you gotta let go. You gotta let go of trying to figure them out. There is no figuring them out. They just don't mind holding two different thoughts at the same time. They don't mind being hypocrites. And they don't care to be fair to you. You're constantly trying to figure out how to be fair to them. And wait, that doesn't make sense. They don't care about fairness. That's not their game. Their game is we punch you in the face, and if you bother to speak back to us, mob, let's go put them. And why do they say mob? One, they live in a fear-based world, and they want their voters to vote based out of fear. And two, they believe in fascism. So at some point, if you ever do anything back to them, great, lock them all up, put them away. It's an easy, ready-made excuse.
It's how they want to handle law and order in the United States too. It's all part and parcel of the same. Like, well, it's fine to arrest people unless you're coming after me, but they want to be in that position of power to be able to do that, right? Transparency does not play well for them, and transparency, whether it's body cams or transparency of reporters, it's never going to be something that they're in favor of, no matter how much of a principle of democracy it is.
Yeah.
So, but to finish the thought, but what drives me crazy is the press. Because, all right, I get the right wing. I understand them, I think, better than most folks, certainly that do this for a living. But apparently everybody in the mainstream media does not understand them. They keep thinking, no, it's 50-50. It's 50-50. We're gonna put out their talking points and we're gonna put out the other side and we're gonna let you decide. No, No, there is no let you decide. Give us the facts, not 50-50. If the facts are not 50-50, don't call it 50-50. If the Lakers won and the Celtics lost, don't say the Celtics say they won and the Lakers say they won, right? Well, who won? Who's right? Who's actually in favor of assault? I mean, after this, it is astoundingly clear. No one should ever write in an article or say on television again, both sides do it. No. One side ran over somebody and murdered them in Charlottesville. This guy celebrated by saying there are very fine people on that side. He's told people to punch people out and at his rallies. He's now celebrating the assault of a reporter. The next time any right winger ever says mob on television, every single anchor is obliged to correct the record and say, no, your president is in favor of violence. He celebrates violence, but they never do. They never do. I'll tell you why, because they're afraid of Republican voters. I mean, they're also afraid of Republican politicians. They're also afraid of Republican pundits. But my God, if I offend my Republican voters, they might not watch me. They're not watching you anyway. They're already at Fox News. And that's not how you're supposed to run an organization that's based on reporting and journalism. You're supposed to actually care about the truth and not worry about your ratings.
Yeah. And yet the New York Times did like a write-up of the Proud Boys guy.
So we covered that on the show yesterday, John, and Anna and I was very animated about it. The New York Times did a terrible job of covering Gavin McInnes, the founder of the Proud Boys. They said that he was like nerd chic or something like that. What even nerd? And we ran a video over a minute long of him saying over a dozen times, I'm in favor of violence. And talking about shooting people, choking people, and it was not a joke, and it was not anything. It was straight up, I want violence. By the way, you know the reason he's in the news is because they went and he gave a speech in New York at a respectable Republican club in New York. They said, oh well, the founder or the president of the club said, no, it was all civil discourse. You know what the speech was about? Celebrating the murder of a socialist in Japan by a fascist. They even reenacted it. They reenacted the murder of a socialist by a fascist. And the Republican Party in New York celebrated that with Gavin McInnes. Oh, both sides do it. Are you kidding me? It is massively disproportionate. The right wing believes in violence. So it's ironic here because he attacks the press physically. And what do? I'm now criticizing the press, and there's a giant difference. And by the way, they will call that even. I don't want you assaulted. I want you perfectly safe, but I want you to do your job. He doesn't want you to do your job. Every time you call it 50-50, you aid and abet Donald Trump in his attacks on the truth and on journalism.
It's stuff like this that really worries me. The unilateral surrender on our part on issues like this, and not just with that profile, but how many different profiles of like, white supremacists are just like you and me. They like mayonnaise.
Let's take these people who are the outliers of civilization that we really don't want to promote, and let's humanize them.
Yeah.
Like we're not humanizing any of the other people that are in trouble in this country right now, right? Like there's no way that a Black Panther movement would have gotten that kind of coverage from the New York Times.
Oh yeah, absolutely, no way. Yeah. And by the way, last thing. Do you know why Gianforte body slammed him in the first place? Because the reporter for The Guardian, Ben Jacobs, had he done something outrageous? Had he asked him about his personal life? Had he said something offensive? No, he asked him about a CBO score. They had scored the healthcare bill that the Republicans were planning on passing, and it said that yes, it would take away coverage for pre-existing conditions. Now, Gianforte was assiduously avoiding that question throughout the campaign because he was going to vote with the Republicans. In fact, he was caught on tape telling donors, of course I'm going to vote with the Republicans and take away healthcare from my citizens. But he didn't want to say it before the election because people like healthcare. They want to be able to have healthcare, right? So since the reporter asked him a great substantive question that he didn't want to answer, he's like, oh, I got a great idea. Instead of getting in trouble by letting people know that I'm gonna rob them of their health insurance and they're gonna die if they vote for me, instead, I'll do more violence and I'll just body slam the guy, and nobody will ever ask me about healthcare anymore, because now we'll be talking about how I'm a body slammer, and that probably will help me. So every time you forget why the question was asked in the first place and why he committed that criminal act against that reporter, in a sense, they win. And never forget that he did the violence in the first place, because Gianforte is an animal who doesn't know how to think and can't debate or answer questions like a human, and resorts to violence like an animal does. Am I clear enough? I don't think I called it 50-50. We hope you're enjoying this free clip from the Young Turks. If you want to get the whole show and more exclusive content while supporting independent media, become a member at tyt.com/join today. In the meantime, enjoy this free segment.
Last night, Beto O'Rourke participated in a CNN town hall, and he was asked about Ted Cruz's recent attempts to paint him as a far-left extremist for one particular reason, because of his support for impeaching Donald Trump. He was asked to follow up on that, and here's what he said.
There may be an open question as to whether the president, then the candidate, sought to collude with the Russian government in 2016. But to quote George Will, very conservative columnist, when we saw him on that stage in Helsinki, defending Vladimir Putin, the head of the country that attacked our democracy in 2016, instead of this country and its citizens and this amazing democracy, that was collusion in action. You may have wondered when he fired James Comey, the principal investigator into what happened in that election, whether that was an attempt to obstruct justice. But when, by broad daylight on Twitter, he asked his Attorney General Jeff Sessions to end the Russia investigation, I would say that's obstruction in action. Ultimately, however, Dana, this is a political question. A Republican colleague of mine in the House will have to come before an audience like this and explain to her constituents or his constituents how they just voted to impeach the president of their own party, how they put their country ahead of their career or their next election or the politics of the moment. The best course to get there, so that every member has all the facts and that they are compelling enough to do the right thing, is to allow the full independence and integrity of the Bob Mueller investigation.
But you've already said, even though that's not done, that you would vote to impeach. And so, according to the Constitution, that means that the president has committed the crime of treason, bribery, or a high crime and misdemeanor. Which one of those do you think the president has committed?
I would liken impeachment to an indictment. There is enough there to proceed with the trial for a full vetting of the facts.
So I thought that he had a really good response there. Seems reasonable if you've been paying attention to what's been going on. What's interesting, of course, is that his initial comments that led to Ted Cruz bringing it up at the debate a few days ago, and now this follow-up, in both cases, he didn't bring it up. So Dana Bash, of course, obviously coming from a similar side as Ted Cruz, like they are trying to get him to talk about it. And I think that he sounds quite reasonable, but again, this is not something that he is like personally trying to campaign on.
Yeah, I like that answer. I thought that was strong. And when I read the headline, and they just had one quote about how the indictment quote that you guys just saw, I was worried that he didn't back it up with facts, but he did. You know, when I watched the video, you guys all just saw, he explained it. To me, the most compelling part of it. And by the way, I don't know how I would vote on impeachment if I was in Congress now. I'm curious what you guys think. So look, there's all these things where he's violated the emoluments clause and he has all these conflicts of interest all across the world. I think that's a legitimate issue. Is he trying to profit from the office? But Beto's reasoning is, I think, perfectly sound, which is, it is an indictment. It's not a conviction of the president. It's not throwing him out of office to impeach him. The House impeaches, the Senate convicts, and you need 2/3 of the Senate to convict. And so, do you have enough evidence? Well, he fired James Comey and said on national television, I fired him because of the Russia investigation. Well, if you fire the guy investigating you, that is by definition obstruction of justice. So I'm very curious what Mueller has, but we all saw the obstruction with our own eyes. Then he said, Jeff Sessions, I want to fire him because he didn't recused himself from the case. I wanted him to end the Russia investigation. Well, that's 2 times. He admitted publicly that he wanted to obstruct justice. So is that enough to indict him in essence by impeaching him in the House? Yeah, perfectly good argument to make on that. So I don't think this is an outrageous thing. I think that they should defend that even more.
Well, that's Congress's basic function. It's oversight of the executive branch. do the oversight, look into these things, stop burying them, stop dismissing the reports, actually do your job. I think that is a very reasonable things for Democrats to get behind of why they need to take back the House. I do think that Ted Cruz, they do have higher Republican registration. They see Donald Trump as their guy. So when they try to get a Democrat to say, I want to impeach Trump, they're like, look, see, they hate us, they're after us. They're trying to play the emotional game. And I like Beto's answer. He's like, no, this is part of a bigger legal process and part of what our job is supposed to be in Congress.
Yeah, I agree strategically, because if you listen to him at his own events, at the town hall generally, at the debate with Ted Cruz, I mean, he is talking about a laundry list of different issues that affect generally economically Texans across Texas. That is what he wants to actually campaign on. I also would vote though, but I would probably do it for the emoluments. I think that very often, including up to right now with Saudi Arabia, his own personal financial interest is driving US policy, and that is completely unacceptable.
Well, since we're all pretending we're in Congress, I would demand that he releases tax records. Right, it shouldn't take a private newspaper to be getting all this information out there about what his legal liabilities and what his financial liabilities are. That's something he should have been able to release, and the IRS should have done that a long time ago. Yeah.
The good news is if the polls are anywhere near right, the Democrats will regain the House, and when they do, they can get his tax records. So tick, 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 tick.
I don't even tick, tick, tick. Because it's not guaranteed that it's going to happen.
All right, let's see what happens.
Help us if it doesn't happen.
I hear you. Hey, listen, don't get me wrong. Vote and get the shirt at shoptyt.com. Okay, but
do you want to turn now to possibly your favorite?
One more quick second on the impeachment. Look, the Democrats run away from the issue because they're afraid it's going to energize Republican voters. Everything energizes Republican voters. Stop panicking about that. Well, so since you run away from the issue, what it does is it never allows you to explain why you would be in favor of impeachment and the things that Donald Trump has done wrong. That's why I love that answer by Beto, because for the first time, I don't know if it's the first time, but one of the very few times on television, you had a Democrat clearly explain obstruction of justice and how that's a crime, and Donald Trump has committed that crime. You almost never hear that case because the Democrats are afraid of their own shadow and have basically ran away from that issue.
And you also don't hear about it because Fox News has been covering that caravan for the past 48 hours, basically. Okay, let's turn to another issue. In the last debate against Ted Cruz, Beto O'Rourke actually called him Lying Ted, something he had avoided doing previously despite it being teed up for him by the president in the last Republican primary. He was asked about that at last night's town hall, and he seemed to backtrack just a little.
I decided that I could either spend the rest of the debate responding to every single dishonest thing that he said, or I could make sure that everyone understood exactly what he's doing. I said, look, he's dishonest. It's one of the reasons that he got tagged with this nickname, and that nickname resonates because it's true. But I got to tell you, it's not something that I feel totally comfortable with, and perhaps in the heat of the moment, I took a step too far. And,
you regret it?
You know that. I don't know that that's the way that I want to be talking in this campaign.
So that really seems to buttress what you had been saying earlier about he just doesn't necessarily have it in him. Ben said that on the Damage Report earlier this week as well.
Yeah. Nah, I hate that answer. That's backtracking and that's apologizing and that shows terrible weakness. So I loved his impeachment answer. He is incredibly strong on some of the policy issues, most of the policy issues. And he's a million times better than Ted Cruz. But our job is to call it like it is. And that's, to me, is a terrible answer.
Why is everyone so afraid of calling these people liars, right? Like you don't see it in headlines, you don't see it in reporting. If it's not a fact, it's a lie. I mean, it's one or the other. Which one is it? Why is it so? Is it just emotionally so difficult?
That's a great question, and I think I have the answer, which is that in Washington, the #1 rule is you must be civil to everyone else in the elite. Now, and that's a mistake that the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia made because Khashoggi, by being a Washington Post columnist, became part of the US elite as he lived in Virginia. So dismembering and beheading people, well, Saudi Arabia actually does that fairly routinely.
All the time.
Yes, and no one cares. In Yemen, they've butchered civilians, thousands upon thousands of civilians, no one cares. You do it to the elite, whoa, you got a problem. But it's not just, I mean, what they did to him obviously was as extreme as it gets. A simple insult to the elite is considered on television and in the media to be a far greater offense than any killing of civilians abroad or anything along those lines. So lying, saying that someone is miscommunicated, okay. Maybe if you're really on the edge, prevaricated, right? Misled, right? But lying,
being obsequious.
Right, but lying implies intent, bad intent, which is exactly what Ted Cruz has. So that's why you should say it. And guess what voters prefer? Well, you being honest about it and call it like it is. Voters would much rather have you say that Ted Cruz is a liar than apologize for it or call it prevarication. I mean, come on, man, don't live in the Beltway. So in the debate, he did call him a liar. That was good. But the second part of his problem with his answer right there was that, no, you actually should have backed it up throughout the debate. He said, I didn't want to keep talking about it throughout the debate. Why? You're in a debate with him. We covered the debate live for our members, right? TYT.com/join to become a member and get all those play-by-play analysis whenever those things are happening, Kavanaugh hearings, this, etc. And during that coverage, John and I were talking about, and Anna, hey, look, he just lied again. Please counter him, show how it wasn't true. And Beto kept pulling his punches, and here he is again pulling his punches. It's a terrible idea.
And it's not going to play well in Texas. It may play well in Washington, D.C., where they're like, oh, that was a very good, polite answer. But Texans aren't known for wanting to pull their punches.
Exactly right.
And they don't want someone to represent them that pulls their punches.
And that's what scares me a little bit about Beto's popularity with everyone else. And I love seeing Beto signs in the most random parts of the country. But he's got to turn out Texan voters. And Texan voters, unfortunately, are not registered in the numbers and don't turn out. They're actually the lowest voting participation rate in the country. Is Texas.
Wow. So let me show you the ad we're running in case you haven't seen it yet, because Beto's not gonna run this ad. So we decided we're gonna do it, and you guys are helping fund it. And I'm gonna show you how much you guys have given so far and how much we've shown it to people in Texas so far. But here's the ad that we're running against Ted Cruz.
This is Ted Cruz. That's him phone banking for Donald Trump after Trump called his wife ugly. Look at him. What kind of a man does that? Oh yeah, Trump also said his father was probably a murderer. He made calls on behalf of Trump after being unmanned by him. You're looking at the saddest man in America, Ted Cruz 2018. Pathetic.
See, that's how you run an ad in Texas.
Do we know who took that photo? Because that person is one of the unsung American heroes.
Yeah, indeed. So TYT.com/Cruz to donate to that. So let's look at the thermometer and see how much you guys have already given. We've already started running the ads in Texas, by the way. I'm gonna tell you about that in a second. You've given $20,953 so far. 20,000, I said was, originally the goal was 10, then it was 20, now it's 25. Let's keep it going.
Let's make it $1 million.
Okay, however much it takes, because 10,000 is going on Facebook digital ads only in Texas. 10,000 is going to YouTube ads in Texas. And so far, we spent less than $1,000 warming up, figuring out how to get it to the right demographics in Texas, et cetera. And already it's reached 190,000 people. Okay, so assuming that's about $1,000 and we're gonna spend about $10,000 on Facebook, that's about 2 million people it could reach. Not bad on Facebook alone. And then you've got YouTube. So you're helping reach millions of people in Texas with that ad. So, and one of our viewers put it in a great way. He said, look, some liberals look at that ad and they get uncomfortable because that's not what liberals like to hear, like words like unmanned, et cetera. But this isn't for liberals. This is for independents in Texas. And they need to understand the problem with Ted Cruz isn't just that he's a bad guy, it's that he's weak and pathetic. And if they don't respect him, they won't vote for him. And they have no reason to respect him. All they gotta know is the reality. And when you remind him, Donald Trump said his wife was ugly, and then he went and kissed Donald Trump's ass. So.
Yeah. Whew. You wanna turn to some breaking news?
Yes.
Okay, relatively fast. Saudi Arabia has confirmed that Jamal Khashoggi was actually killed that day in the Saudi consulate in Istanbul, according to Saudi state TV. We have some more updates about what they are apparently doing about it. The Saudis have apparently set up a commission that is going to investigate his death, and they have given themselves 1 month to make a report about it. They have detained 18 Saudi nationals, and they also have an explanation as to how the death actually happened. They're saying that he met with some of these people in the consulate. There was a quarrel and a physical altercation that led to his death. So reading between the lines, they are apparently stating that Jamal picked a fight with this team of 15 Saudi nationals that was dispatched from Saudi Arabia to Istanbul, and it was some sort of coincidental, unfortunate death that happened. This, to me, and this is just the initial reporting, I will admit that, seems ridiculous. The timeline they have given themselves to figure out what happened is insane. But I will make a prediction. This feels to me like more than enough cover for Donald Trump to do absolutely nothing about this.
Of course, the whole point was to do nothing about it. There was almost never any chance that they were going to hold the Saudis accountable. I mean, how many times does Donald Trump say, oh, they gave us $110 billion? And then, first of all, of course, it's not true. It's $14.5 billion. Big surprise that Donald Trump wasn't telling the truth. Pat Robertson said on TV the other day, what's one person's life compared to all that money? I'm sure that's the same thing Jesus would have said. What a good Christian he is. And so now Trump's gonna go around, that's it. We asked them to for accountability. They arrested a random 18 people who will be scapegoated in Saudi Arabia now. And now their life is in danger, and most of them are probably had nothing to do with this, or in fact, they're probably enemies of the current leadership, and they're gonna use it as an opportunity to probably kill them too.
Oh yeah, the Crown Prince, when he first showed up on the scene as the Crown Prince, decided to arrest, behead, kill, or exile anybody else who possibly could have been a threat to his power. And so now what he's doing, he's gonna throw under the bus his head of security for mucking all of this up. That's the accountability that's gonna happen, is the person he relied on to execute this is now the one he's gonna throw under the bus, which sounds very Trumpian to me, right? This is exactly
100%.
Right. This is what Donald Trump would do. You are useful until you're not. There's no sense of loyalty, and as long as you have the business relationship, that will trump anything else.
Yeah.
No, you took the words right out of my mouth. It's exactly what Trump would do. He'd get you to do something stupid, then turn around and yell at you. Oh, duh, well, why did you do such a stupid thing? Like tell Giuliani to go make ridiculous defenses that's gonna get him in bigger trouble, then yell at him afterwards. It's his MO, he does it almost every time.
And let's talk about who else he praises in the world, right? I mean, I really think that this is what he's telling us he would like to be. It's not just about the military parade that he saw in North Korea that he wants to see down Pennsylvania Avenue. He likes the idea that the head of the president of the Philippines, Duterte, is able to go out and just kill people by calling them drug murderers, like drug dealers. That's it. You just kill them. He likes the idea that somebody is writing against you and your rulership, not the country, right? Like Khashoggi was writing great things about what Saudi people are capable of, that if somebody says something against your rule, rogue assassins can come and dismember you. I mean, I think this is all signals of the kind of country that Donald Trump would like to see.
Yeah.
Is there such a thing as a rogue assassin?
It's the same thing as the person who rolls in with a chainsaw as backup.
Yeah, and so let's come back around to the central claim here in this breaking news event, that there was an altercation that went awry, okay? As if Khashoggi decided that he would take on a group of 15 assassins. And that
while getting a marriage registration documentation produced.
Yeah.
With his fiance waiting outside.
Yeah.
And that those assassins happened to come armed with a bone saw, but like in case.
Just back up.
In case while we're giving a marriage license to this guy, he decides to try to kill all 15 of us, and we decide to kill him in self-defense. Maybe we should have a bone saw handy to dismember him afterwards.
And this report, right? Like how much bull is that gonna be? They have a month to come up with whatever fancy words they want. And it's going, I mean, the investigation didn't even start until they'd already cleaned up all the blood in the place.
Yeah.
So this is classic Washington elite speak. Let's do a working group and get to the bottom of this.
Yeah.
Let's get a report and really figure this out.
This is frustrating for a lot of reasons. I mean, first of all, this is definitely going to lead to despots around the world killing more journalists because we will not respond in any way. We won't do anything. I mean, all the politicians who've been doing great work trying to put pressure on the administration to cut those arms deals, Bernie Sanders calling for pulling out of support for Saudi's war in Yemen, that will not come to pass because Donald Trump has all the power in this. So more journalists will be killed. I mean, he didn't care when Vladimir Putin was killing dissidents and journalists.
It's more than just like the defending freedom of press and expression, right? Which is still something that the rest of the world doesn't do well in general. It's a signal he's sending to everybody of you just do whatever you want in your backyard. You can kill people, you can run things however you want, you can have the Russians invading your country. The United States wants a bit of your money, but that's it. We don't really have any, under Trump, we don't have any broader goals of what the world should look like. And he's in complete denial about the fact that we are interconnected in a global society.
And one of the most frustrating things is, this is ridiculous. The Fox News cover on this is going to be ridiculous, and it is going to be the most convincing thing that has ever been said to Trump supporters. They will eat this up. Yeah, Jamal went in there and he attacked the entire consulate. He went in fist swinging, and they had to kill him with a bone saw.
It's going to be even worse. It's like, well, he wrote some bad things about his ruler. Sorry, he's a Saudi citizen. Tough luck. That's what happens to you.
Isn't it amazing though what he has been able to get these supposed concern, like they now think Vladimir Putin is a leader to look up to. Saudi Arabia is awesome. So they simultaneously, they hate Muslims more than anything in the world. And Saudi Arabia that's the place to be.
The most fundamentalist Muslim government in the world.
Extremists, let's call them that.
Yeah. And they believe that. Yeah, they're awesome.
They gave passports and they have the nationalities of 11 of the 9/11 hijackers, right? Like the thing that made America hate the Muslim world, Saudi was indirectly, if not directly, responsible for that. Yet, as long as Donald Trump says they're cool and he's got a hotel in Riyadh, everything's good.
Yeah.
Now a note is going around, and we told you this ahead of time. I said, look, Saudi Arabia, it's not just their arms deal, it's not just the oil. They have an alliance between us, Saudi Arabia, and Israel against Iran and the Shia Muslims in the region. Okay, that alliance is unbreakable. They're gonna cover this up no matter what. In fact, they will soon start attacking Khashoggi. That's what we said when this story happened. And not only did they started attacking Khashoggi, as we told you yesterday on the show, guy on CRTV started calling him a radical Islamist. And they're like, remember, Khashoggi's Muslim, what do we care, right? That's basically the essence of it. And all Muslims are terrorists, except Saudi Arabia, which actually does do the terrorism. They're not terrorists. Okay, innocent Muslims who are dismembered and beheaded, they are terrorists. And he said he's a terrorist sympathizer. He's against Israel, wink, wink. All that stuff happened. Now, today there's a news story about how the House GOP is sending out talking points about how it was Khashoggi's fault, that he had it coming. Okay, so you guys are absolutely right. The conclusion of this is twofold. One, we just sent a note to all the dictators and dictator wannabes throughout the world. It's okay, kill anyone you like, as long as we get paid, when we don't care at all. And the second note is to the conservatives at home. Muslims are terrible, except the worst, most extreme terrorist funding, fundamentalist Muslims in the world, they're awesome. The ones that just beheaded someone. Remember what you said about ISIS and all the reasons you hate Muslims? They do beheadings. They just beheaded Khashoggi. They cut his fingers, likely when he was alive. And now you're applauding it because your dear orange leader told you to. That's about the saddest thing I've ever seen. So enjoy being as pathetic as you are.
There's like a 15% chance he will mime the torture and murder of Jamal at a rally at some point.
God.
Did a body
the fact
slam
that
last night?
we're not objecting to that says something. I'm like,
oh, I
yeah,
object to it.
No, that we actually see that this is reason that yes, that actually could happen in our current reality.
Yeah, right. When it's like if someone suggested that in an earlier administration, Republican or Democrat,
Obama.
Like we'd be like,
pause,
John, come on.
What are the odds actually?
Yeah.
Very high.
Yeah, give me odds, I'll bet on it. Okay,
Please vote.
I know, vote.